Antarctica has become the most secretive region on Earth, as access for any unauthorized person is restricted beyond the 60th parallel, and airplanes are not allowed to fly over the ice continent. It is a strictly protected area, and care has been taken to ensure that only privileged people are allowed there. Only a few scientists and selected people have access to the bases and research facilities, but by whose order? The Rockefeller family, led by John D. Rockefeller Sr. and his son John D. Rockefeller Jr., were the masterminds behind the cover-up and manipulation of all history since the beginning of the 20th century, based on a series of events that explain how we got to the present time. This unscrupulous family, who took control of the US government long ago, has managed to take control through funding or donations, investing their money to push their hidden interests and influence future developments. This was the case, for example, in the fields of education or health, either openly with direct donations from the members or covertly through the Rockefeller Family Foundation. This also applies to the excursions of Admiral Richard E. Byrd to the two poles, which were mainly financed by John D. Rockefeller Jr. and with whom he is said to have had an excellent relationship. The big question is why this family has such an immense interest in such inhospitable places at the end of the world. The first Rockefeller-funded mission to fly over the North Pole, which included Admiral Byrd, took place in 1926. Officially, he was the first to accomplish such a feat, and upon his return to the US, he was received with all honors as if he were a hero. But why was there so much interest in exploring the geographic North Pole from the air? Various theories emerge here, none of which seem to have any demonstrable basis. The truth was known only to Byrd and his backers, with whom he met to share his exploration. After the Arctic mission was completed, the focus turned to the next major destination, Antarctica. In 1928, Byrd undertook his first expedition to the ice continent with a fleet of 2 ships and 3 aircraft. Coincidentally, his flagship was a Norwegian-built vessel that had been involved in rescuing the crew of the Titanic after its sinking. Byrd and his team settled on the Ross Ice Shelf and established the Little America camp. From there, explorations continued for the next 2 years using snowshoes, dog sleds, snowmobiles and airplanes. A lot of effort to unlock the secrets of the unexplored regions of Antarctica. Byrd's second and third missions to Antarctica took place in 1934 and 1939, respectively. From that point on, not only did Rockefeller and other wealthy people like Ford finance the trips, but the US government was also involved with public funds. This is not surprising, since these powerful families had taken control of the government after the creation of the Federal Reserve Bank. Despite the increase in financiers, Admiral Byrd did not forget his great patron on these Antarctic missions and named a plateau and mountain range after Rockefeller. But it's surprising how they play with numbers, because the height of the mountain marks 666 meters on the map, and the importance of this particular number for the elite is well known. It is the same number that can be seen on a building very close to the Rockefeller Center, the so-called 666 of Fifth Avenue in New York, which is currently owned by Jewish businessman Jared Kushner, Ivanka Trump's husband and Donald Trump's son-in-law. The most interesting events in Antarctica's history began in 1946 with the both mysterious and disastrous high jump mission. Just 1 year after the end of World War II, the United States undertook the most important mission on the frozen continent. It involved nearly 5,000 men with 33 aircraft and 13 ships under the direction of Admiral Richard E. Byrd and the supervision of Secretary of the Navy James Forrestal. It had been announced to the public as a scientific peacekeeping mission that was to last about 6 months. But after 6 weeks, the troops were suddenly and urgently withdrawn and returned home. There were a considerable number of casualties. Nobody knows exactly what has happened during this mission. Known are only the statements of Admiral Byrd, who warned that the US government could be attacked and the country should take protective measures against a possible invasion by enemy ships from the polar regions. and he stressed that Americans could no longer retreat into isolation, believing that the oceans and distance from the poles would continue to guarantee America's safety. Apparently, Admiral Byrd's mission had encountered an adversary with unprecedented technology, and he was obviously shocked by this. In attempting to explain the nature of the mysterious air attacks that had so dramatically affected the expedition, several hypotheses were advanced. The possibility of a Nazi presence was considered, with aircraft developed from technology based on real energy, as well as other theories, including that the place was inhabited by non-human beings or inhabitants technologically superior to us. The only thing we know for sure is that Operation High Jump seems to have triggered a series of related events. In July 1947, the year the mission was completed, the Roswell UFO incident coincidentally occurred in New Mexico. Was it advanced terrestrial or extraterrestrial technology, or was it a hoax to divert attention from something? 2 months later, the CIA was formed, and we remember that the Rockefeller family was the driving force in the formation of the CIA and the FBI. In addition, the US Air Force Office and the US Department of Defense were established, whose first US Secretary of Defense was James Forrester, who had led Operation High Jump. Supposedly, he took his own life, but this event was surrounded by strange circumstances. The fact is that this happened in 1949, just 2 years after the end of the operation in Antarctica. Added to this departure was the loss of Admiral Richard Byrd, who died of a heart condition in 1957 after completing his last mission in Antarctica, Operation Deep Freeze. 2 years later, in 1959, the Antarctic Treaty was signed, stipulating that Antarctica was scientific reserve, promoting freedom of scientific research and prohibiting military activities on the continent. This was the first arms control treaty used during the Cold War. Even today, despite the obvious global political instability, with supposedly warring countries creating unrestrained conflicts, the existing agreement between them has strangely never been broken by anyone. It is curious that the only military contingent ever damaged was the one in Operation High Jump. After this, Antarctica was declared a protected area, prohibiting any military activity and opening the continent to scientific research by all the countries of the world, albeit with restrictions and controls. It would be logical to assume that the same force that attacked or defended against the Navy is still there and is probably responsible for the fact that no one claims this territory for their country, because, as we have seen, their technology is much more advanced. The most fascinating thing is that Rockefeller and the ruling elite have taken it upon themselves to protect this place so that it does not come into the public eye. You could say that these obscure figures are the true owners of Antarctica, since only they have access to its interior. They even used organizations like Greenpeace, funded by the Rockefeller family, to promote the supposed defense of Antarctic territory and publish reports on global warming that only benefit the globalist agenda. There is nothing wrong with the protection of the Antarctic ecosystem unless it is nourished by certain interests that favor free access only for a few privileged self-elected people to conceal their hidden agendas. All the indications are that the shadow power that guides the governments involved in Antarctica, especially that of the United States, is withholding from us a significant piece of information that would be of great interest to humanity and possibly shake the foundations of a modern civilization.